Welcome to the deep dive. This deep dive is content we've adapted from a really fantastic clinician-written article on Mentalyc.
Right.
We're bringing these insights into audio for all you therapists and counselors who, prefer to listen while you're on the go, moving between sessions.
We're just trying to get through that admin block.
Exactly.
And we really want to give a warm acknowledgement to the author of the original piece, Ehab Yusuf. He's a licensed psychologist, and he put together this really curated collection of clinical literature.
And if you're new to the platform, just so you know, Mentalyc is a clinical intelligence platform. It's designed to support therapists, really to help make that whole documentation and administrative side of practice just a lot more manageable.
And I think the reason an article like this resonates so deeply is because it speaks to the hidden reality of our work.
Oh, absolutely. That internal world.
Yeah, that moment. Maybe you've just asked a challenging question and the client just stares.
Yeah.
For like 30 seconds.
A long silence, yes.
Or that sinking feeling when you realize you've just made, mild error in interpretation.
Right.
It's that internal wrestling match, the self-doubt, the uncertainty, especially when you're managing something like countertransference.
It's that inner vulnerability, really, that defines how successful the outer work can be.
Exactly.
So this fantastic article is called The 8 Best Books for Therapists in 2025. But our mission today is to go a little deeper than just summaries.
Right.
We want to distill the single most important and maybe the most challenging insight from this whole collection.
And I think that insight really is this. The therapist is the primary instrument of change.
The instrument of change. I like that.
Yeah. It means you have to continually evolve your own therapeutic self. Your vulnerability, your self-compassion, your boundaries.
Because the work is messy.
The work is messy.
Yeah.
And that adaptability it's non-negotiable. So the books, they aren't just about techniques. They're about the real cost and the reward of bringing your authentic self into the room.
I love that frame. The therapist as the primary instrument. Okay, so let's unpack this with the books. If the foundation is vulnerability and, embracing the awkwardness, where does the article suggest we even start?
It starts us with Louis Cozolino's Making of a Therapist, a practical guide for the inner journey.
Classic.
It is. And Cozolino argues that the real professional journey, it's the inner journey. This book gives therapists, especially newer clinicians, permission.
Permission to not have it all figured out.
Exactly. Permission to acknowledge your uncertainties, your fears. It frames mistakes not as these, terrible failings, but as really essential opportunities for growth.
Giving yourself permission to be imperfect, that sounds like that's the prerequisite for just staying in the room when things get messy.
It absolutely is. And Cozolino gets very specific about how to manage that messiness. He introduces a technique he calls shuttling.
Shuttling, okay.
It's the ability to navigate these really complex client interactions and then, in a second, switch your focus to the practical stuff.
Like fees or cancellations.
Right. Bringing up fees, managing a cancellation policy, confronting resistance, and then being able to shuttle right back into the deep emotional work.
Wow, that shuttling idea really speaks to the sheer cognitive load of the job.
It's immense.
I mean, you could be talking about deep foundational trauma, and then suddenly you have to switch into, business mode to talk about the holiday schedule. It's like having 2 different brains on at the same time.
Precisely. And the books on this list really highlight just how much the therapeutic landscape has evolved over time, which demands that kind of flexibility. If you look at some of the historical texts mentioned, you see these radical extremes that clinicians have had to either integrate or, reject.
Let's touch on that. The article brings up Arthur Yanoff's controversial work from the 70s, The Primal Scream.
Right, which is such a fascinating historical footnote. It was this radical divergence from everything else.
In what way?
It basically argued that neurosis was healed only through this intense, deep emotional release of repressed pain. It was all about extreme expression over, say, careful cognitive processing.
And it got a lot of celebrity attention, right? John Lennon was a famous proponent.
He was. But the article notes that it pretty quickly met with a lot of skepticism from the mainstream.
Because the evidence wasn't there.
Exactly. It lacked consistent scientific validation. It's just a good reminder that the field is constantly recalibrating its standards for what counts as evidence.
And that brings us to, I think, a necessary evolution with a book like Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score.
A huge shift. Van der Kolk takes that search for healing deep pain and grounds it firmly in neuroscience.
Right. Trauma isn't just in your head.
It's not just a mental event. It is stored in the body, in the brain. And that forces the therapist today to integrate somatic solutions, things like yoga or EMDR. It really underscores that our job is to continually integrate this research-backed embodied knowledge.
That contrast is so key. You're moving from an approach that's just about, explosive emotional release to one that's focused on nervous system regulation and integration.
A whole different paradigm.
So if integrating all this new, complex knowledge is so important, then the art of the relationship itself, that has to be the foundation.
Which brings us to Irvin Yalom.
Ah, Yalom. He's really the maestro of relational therapy, especially in the gift of therapy.
What's his core idea?
His whole philosophy demands a genuine human connection above everything else. He advocates for this profound transparency.
So letting the client actually matter to you.
Truly matter to you.
Yeah.
And crucially, being humble enough to acknowledge your own errors. Sometimes right there, in real time, when they happen.
That is asking for a radical level of vulnerability from the therapist. I mean, if you let every client matter that intensely and you're open about your mistakes, where does the rigidity of technique even fit in?
Well, for Yalom, it doesn't.
His central insight is the need to be radically adaptable. He suggests that we have to create a brand new, customized therapy for each and every client. You can't just rely on a one-size-fits-all protocol.
So the relationship is the methodology.
That's it, exactly.
But, wow, I mean, that level of customization and attunement that Yalom demands, allowing for error, managing that intense emotional engagement, that sounds exhausting.
It can be.
It just forces the question, how do we stay true to evidence-based practice while also risking burnout by investing so fully in every single unique relationship?
And that tension right there, fostering that deep alliance while managing your own professional self-preservation, that's exactly what the modern therapist is facing every day.
It's a tightrope walk.
It is. The challenge is, how do you reconcile Yalom's demand for radical self-awareness with the reality that you have 10 minutes to reflect after a complex session?
Right. You need support to close that gap between the session's intensity and the reflection you need to do.
That's where the benefits of some of these clinical intelligence tools become, really relevant for supporting the reflective practice.
And the article brings this in by mentioning Alliance Genie.
It does.
So the clinician is in the room doing that intensive Yalom-style relational work.
But Alliance Genie is designed to support the reflection process by surfacing those subtle dynamics, the little insights into the therapeutic alliance.
And what's really important for clinicians to understand is how it does this, especially with our privacy concerns.
Absolutely.
It leverages the text of your clinical notes to analyze patterns across sessions. It can flag subtle shifts in the alliance that your memory might just miss.
And it's all based only on the structured text. There's never any audio, never any video data stored.
Which is key. It's a way to help you spot your blind spots in those customized, intense relationships without ever violating the sanctity of the session itself.
It just reinforces that concept that we have to continually be learning from these complex interactions, especially if we're customizing therapy for every client, like Yalom says.
So we need that radical transparency from Yalom and maybe a tool like Alliance Genie to spot dynamics we miss. But what allows a therapist to even sustain this level of intense self-reflection without just crashing?
It really requires an intentional commitment to self-kindness. And this is where the article brings in Kristen Neff's foundational work on self-compassion.
Right.
If a therapist is going to be genuinely empathetic, truly effective, they have to treat themselves with kindness, with understanding, with respect. You cannot pour from an empty or a self-critical cup.
And that idea of self-kindness connects so directly back to the roots of humanistic practice.
It does. It's a beautiful connection to Carl Rogers' core concepts from On Becoming a Person.
Unconditional positive regard, empathy.
And especially congruence, being genuine, being transparent. Neff's work on self-kindness is the fuel that allows a therapist to maintain that congruence.
Especially when you make a mistake or when the work gets awkward.
That's when you need it most. Without self-compassion, congruence becomes almost impossible because we just spiral into defensiveness or self-criticism.
It sounds like the entire framework is interconnected. You need self-compassion from Neff to maintain congruence from Rogers.
Which then enables the genuine, adaptable connection that Yalom talks about.
Which is what you need to even undertake Cozzolino's challenging inner journey. It all hinges on the therapist managing their own internal resources.
It all comes back to that.
Okay, quick pause here. If all this talk about deep presence, reflection, and self-compassion feels, necessary but maybe unattainable because of the sheer administrative load you're under, Mentalyc can help.
Mm-hmm.
Maintaining this level of nuanced reflection is just so hard when documentation is burdensome. Their AI note taker is specifically designed to remove that massive cognitive load.
It gives you time back.
It reallocates that admin time back to your clinical focus and your reflective work. And you can trust that the platform is fully IPA and SOC2 compliant. If you want to explore the tools that support your clinical focus, check it out at Mentalyc.com.
Okay, so let's synthesize that core insight. Radical adaptability that's fueled by self-kindness. We should ground this in a practical application.
For the clinician walking into a session this afternoon.
Exactly. And we can draw from the really practical books on the list, like Nicole Artz's Sometimes Therapy is Awkward, and Nancy McWilliams' Psychoanalytic Psychotherapy.
I think Art's work provides such a candid, necessary corrective. We talk about all this deep insight.
But we have to acknowledge the messiness.
Yes, the unavoidable messiness and even the occasional humor of the work. Therapy is awkward sometimes. We do have insecurities.
And normalizing that is so crucial for self-compassion. Then you have McWilliams, who, even within this complex psychodynamic framework, stresses that clinicians have to proactively integrate self-care and boundary setting.
As non-negotiables.
Non-negotiables, they're essential parts of the practice, not just nice little extras you do if you have time.
So the practical takeaway for today is kind of twofold. First, embrace the messiness, the awkwardness. Just know it's part of the job.
That's Arzt.
And second, treat your boundaries and your self-care not as a luxury, but as the direct fuel for your effectiveness.
Which is McWilliams. Absolutely. The books reviewed here, from Cozzolino's Inner Journey to McWilliams' Boundary Setting, they all underscore that sustained empathy is directly proportional to the therapist's own well-being.
So by embracing the imperfections, setting the boundaries, focusing on our own growth,
we maintain the capacity to offer that truly customized healing space for our clients.
It's so clear that the single insight from this entire list is that the therapist is the instrument, the techniques. They're secondary to the state of the person who's delivering them.
That capacity for continual self-evolution is really what these books are all focused on shaping.
So here's a provocative closing thought for you to reflect on. If you really embrace this idea that you must continually evolve your own therapeutic self, not just your techniques, and you accept that messiness and awkwardness are just part of it, which book on this list would you start with this week to genuinely challenge your current assumptions about the work?
That's a powerful invitation to vulnerability.
And as we wrap up, if you do want support tracking those subtle, sometimes missed alliance patterns, especially when you're radically customizing care session to session, we mentioned Alliance Genie earlier. It is a powerful clinical aid that helps you reflect across sessions just by analyzing the text of your notes without ever storing any audio or video.
And that blend of clinical depth and privacy-compliant, practical support, it's just essential for sustaining this incredibly demanding and rewarding work.
It truly is. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive, and we really hope this conversation supports you in your practice this week.
Take good care.